Welcome to Do You Ever Wonder? The show that brings you answers to many of the questions that you may have, but with no one to ask. Do You Ever Wonder is hosted by Mike Haltman, CEO of Hallmark Abstract Service, who, like you, has always been deeply curious about a wide variety of topics. Each week, Mike will be speaking with guests who are leaders in their field and who have inspirational stories to tell. So now, sit back and enjoy the show.
So, welcome everybody. My name is Mike Haltman, and today we have as our guest John Piccinnini, who I wasn't sure if he was coming back, but he did come back. John has a very interesting dual role. He is a partner at the firm of Kaplan, Trapani, Faria, and Rabinapur. Hopefully, pronounced all those correctly.
Yes, you did.
He is a real estate partner there. And in addition, along with his wife, he is the co-owner of the Clam Bar in Amagansett, which is an institution on the East End. 41 years, I believe. You've been there.
Yes.
And it always fascinates me because people always talk to me about being in business with my wife and, how is that? What are the strains? What are the benefits? And we're going to get into that a little bit. But you're in two pretty intensive businesses, real estate law and a seasonal restaurant. Uh, how do you balance that?
Well, it was a learning curve when we first purchased it. It was the restaurant was in, my wife's family for 41 years. And when my mother-in-law retired, we had the opportunity to take it over. So we purchased the restaurant from her. And what ended up happening is my wife, she was an ad executive at a, pretty big company out in the city, handling digital ad sales. So we made the decision that she was going to leave that job and, take over the restaurant. With her having the experience of being in the restaurant business, since she was 14 years old, it was, for her, it was a seamless transition. It's funny, I was actually talking to her last night, and she was saying that when she got her corporate job, that was more difficult for her to transition and get used to than coming back to really, her bread and butter, right? Where she learned as a 14-year-old the business, doing her thing for all those years. And even when, I first met her 10 years ago, one of the conditions, we met in May of 2013. We're gonna say 2013.
Better go back and check that.
Gonna have to check that one. Yeah, well, it's 10 years ago. So we met in May 2013, and as summer came along, she's like, "Look, I go out to the Hamptons every week," and I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome! Like, this is great." She goes, "Yeah, the caveat is that, look, I like you, and I, just see this, could be going, somewhere further, but yeah, I'm going to be working at my family's restaurant. You're more than welcome to come out and work with us." So that
Yeah.
summer, oh, I did. 10 years later, I'm here.
Wow.
Um,
That's a fantastic story, and I know that the restaurant business is really tough, and I imagine a seasonal business is even tougher. But the fact that, your wife spent so many years in the business is, definitely makes it a more seamless transition, no question.
well, exactly, and it's funny when I talk to people either at the closing table, you making conversation when you wait for funding approval, or just sitting around the table while people are signing docs. The other side, talking to your clients, title closers, the bank attorney, whoever it may be, and when you're out here, things come up, you're chit chatting, and they kind of like look at me funny, like, "Oh, you own the restaurant?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "How the heck did you get involved in this?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "Well, it's not just like me and my wife decided just to, look for a restaurant and purchase it. It was in her family for years,
Well,
and her mom wanted to see the transition to a family member, so it
you
worked out."
want to protect the legacy, no question. But
Exactly.
when I spoke with you, I guess 2 months ago, we hadn't seen each other in probably 3 years,
Yep.
4 years. And I was kind of surprised by the fact that you were involved in a restaurant as well. And I think, a question I had at the time, does the restaurant help you on the real estate end? And does the real estate end help you probably to a lesser extent on the restaurant end?
I think that they both go hand in hand, because of the fact just being out on the East End. We moved out here full time this year. August will be a year. We got our kids in school here. So, we're making our, relationships out here, becoming part of the community. We're not just going back and forth. We used to live in Rockville Center, but now, we're setting roots down, and this is where we're going to be for, a very long time.
That's
And
great.
then, I think it helps on both ends. One, I've always believed in being part of the community. And this, is, we stepped into the restaurant, we put our, own spin on it, or, we're doing that this year too, making it, ours, but keeping the culture at the same time, which is very important.
No question.
That was one of the things that my mother-in-law was very, very, adamant about, and we 100% agreed. Rather than, selling off to maybe someone else that came by, right? If you keep it in the family, she could take our word that we're keeping the culture, right?
No, that's great.
Um,
That's great. But so in your business, in the real estate end of
yep,
your business, some of your bread and butter is centered around real estate agents. And
exactly.
the fact that you have the restaurant and you're a little bit of a new entity out on the East End, uh, does the restaurant help you in forming or starting to form relationships with real estate people?
I think it's a valuable talking piece, right? It goes to just show that we are part of the community. We are setting roots here. The we didn't open up the firm. We have our firm in Nassau. We didn't open up the firm here for me to be here 2 days a week, or just say we're out here by appointment only.
Right.
And then I'm, able to show, hey, I'm part of the community. Like, I want to do good deals. I want to make sure, your clients are protected, because they're going to see me out in town. Like, it's a small town. If, a bad deal goes, they're going to see
Yes.
me and they're not going to be happy. Like,
Well,
that's a
like
good part
everything
of it.
else, you have your integrity, you have your reputation.
Exactly.
I remember when I used to do share houses out east, the culture out east is almost separate from the culture in the rest of Suffolk and Nassau County, where people, it seems to be much more of a community versus, when you're in where I live in Nassau County, you're in a neighborhood, but nobody sees each other, nobody even talks to each other unless you're walking your dog. And I think it always seemed to me in the Hamptons or the East End that it was much different. The mentality was different.
It is, because, it's one of those things where, yes, people have summer homes, so they're coming out here in the summertime, springtime, early fall. But we have two kids in school, 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So we're making relationships there. It helps to show and become, and it's something that I truly believe in, and my wife does too. Become part of the community. We're slowly trying to volunteer at school when things come up. My wife's helping with a clothing drive, things like that. Just, it, it, and it's not for business. It's something that we like to do also.
Right.
Um, but it also helps, don't get me wrong, that we do like to do these things, and, believe in the community aspect. And I felt that was actually missing when we lived in Rockville Center. We never really set those roots. So
Right.
being out here and then being able to say, hey, I'm, part of, helping people purchase houses out here, and, help them facilitate maybe their dream home, or, and even on the investment side, someone, maybe purchasing a second home for investment purposes to, try to, help their, family generationally down the line, things
Right.
like that. It's important. I like it. And, I think it does help with the agents. And then on the restaurant side too, it helps. It's always good to get the name out there, right? Hey, stop by. It's one of
Always
those
good
things.
to get the name out there, but it's also, I know, when I go to the dry cleaner or I go to a bar, word of mouth. And I'm sure that when you're at the restaurant, maybe not working behind the cash register, but talking to people and making sure everything's good and getting to know people and asking questions. I'm sure it's a good outlet for definitely driving referrals, driving.
Oh, absolutely. It's funny because my restaurant experience was when I was 14, I was a busser for 2 days and it didn't work out. So
Oh,
that was my experience until I met my wife, and I'm proud to say that I started out as a busser and I worked my way up the company.
there you go. You're now look at you now. But
I-
it's got to be. I know people who are like managers of stores in the city who have also have stores in the Hamptons, and the issues they face, and I don't know if it's the same now as it was in COVID or before COVID. Finding seasonal workers is very, very difficult.
yes, it is extremely difficult. It is a situation where it does go to lack of housing out here in terms of, there's just not, seasonal workers. There's not enough people out here to, take, the back of the house jobs or, front of the house jobs where we're always usually pretty stacked and have more of a wait list. But back of the house, a lot of the restaurants out here, it seems to be the conversation is, hey, do you know anyone that could help out in the kitchen, this and that? Like whenever, we meet other owners of restaurants out here, we're all, anytime someone asks me, I'm like, oh, we're kind of looking for the same thing. But if, we find some extra people, we'd love to send them your way.
So does it
Um,
count that you have to help your employees with housing?
so we actually have two staff houses
Oh, wow.
that we rent. One's year round that we just have. It's a great little spot. And then there's one that we do seasonal from Memorial Day to Columbus Day. And
Oh,
it's it's, and we disclose everything that it's staff houses to, the owner, the realtor, and, the landlord. So there's no issues, that attorney side of me,
you
you
got to
know.
protect yourself. Sure.
So it's everything's disclosed. Everyone knows, what the house is being used for. It's not like, hey, me and my family are coming out for, the summer.
So are there
Um,
10 people there?
no, 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 no. We abide by all the rules
Right,
and regulations that,
right, no doubt.
in the lease and, everything the town obviously allows for.
Right.
So and I'm a stickler for that. It's,
Sure.
gotta protect myself too, license to protect and all of that. So and it's and the restaurant and, also the landlord too. And
Right.
it's but that's important. And but it's it is interesting, the back of the house. We actually just hired this year a new chef and a new general manager who have great experience. They've been out here for years, a bunch of different restaurants, and they're really helping us, develop out, the front of the house systems and the back of the house systems. Um,
It's quite a change, I'm sure, from when your mother-in-law started. The
oh, absolutely.
organization of things has to be like if you're, do you know on a minute by minute basis what you need to order? You have a run on,
Pretty much
right?
in our systems. We could get down to the nitty gritty if we wanted to, but that would mean that the executive chef would be at her computer all day, doing it. But like she checks in, a couple in within a few hours of like, all right, we need to
Right.
do this. There's certain deadlines you got to meet for ordering.
So now
But
you brought on a new executive chef. Do the recipes change? Does an executive chef come in and put their own imprint on things?
a little bit, but nothing that touches the culture, right? We added a couple of new cool dishes. We also, me and Kelly, my wife, we emphasize the culture does not change, meaning these certain items are culture, and it's, we explain that was part of, I don't want to say a deal breaker or not in hiring, both individuals, but they knew the restaurant, they knew yeah, no, we will not be touching XYZ.
Okay. You
And there's
got
actually
some,
one thing that they both were like, oh, surprised. Like, I'm not gonna say what dish it is, like, I'm surprised, like this is popular. I'm like, no, we do not touch that on the menu. That
right.
that stays, it's an institutional item. And it was really funny kind of to like just see their faces and just be like, interesting.
They're not going to be bringing in a spaghetti and meatballs dish.
No, no, no. This is all fish related. Um, it's you know, we did a soft opening. I actually had some colleagues out with just a soft opening of just a couple of people I know out here. You know, we served a couple of the new beverages we were putting on the menu. We served, you know, a bunch of the new food and obviously sent out the classics.
Right.
So we got some good feedback and, you know, we've opened now for about 2 weeks and, you know, we're always, you know, listening to the feedback from our servers who are obviously getting it from the customers and we're making tweaks. But this menu we have out now is not the final menu. We have a couple of new things we're going to add as well, not taking anything off, but
Surprises here.
a couple of surprises for Memorial Day and going forward that we're you know working on and finalizing.
So now,
Um,
do people have parties there? Like,
so yes and no. Last year we got a lot of inquiries on it and we decided we just weren't equipped. You know, it was our first year. We just wanted to really just hunker down and really just learn the intricacies of this specific restaurant. Like
yeah,
every restaurant has their own quirks, just like every law firm has their own culture quirks. Like when I came over to Kaplan, I was a solo and I had, you know, my paralegal Viviana and we had our system. Well, you go to a bigger firm has their system and you got to learn it.
right.
But,
They
you
don't
know,
care about
we're
your
more or
art.
less working with not a cult. Well, yes, we're working with a culture, but you're also, when you're, you know, buying a building, you're also learning about the quirks of the building, you
Definitely.
know, and the kitchen and things like that, it was pretty cool to learn. I'm still learning and I take a back seat to most of it. You know, I have my practice to run. It's, you know, that's my full-time job. That's important to me. But you know, I am in the background. Me and my wife, we work together on making decisions, but she's day-to-day ops, you know, like without her, you know, obviously I wouldn't be involved in this. Let's
Right.
call it what it is. It came through her family,
So,
which we're grateful for. But you know, she's on the floor, you know, she's there a couple days a week, you know, meaning like six. But she
restaurants are a
knows everything
love
going
job.
on.
So, I own a title company and I work with my wife. And a
Yep.
lot of people say, I couldn't do that. And, luckily we do different things the same way that you and your wife basically do different things. And your roles at the restaurant are different. You have your legal work. But are there any issues in terms of bringing work home?
I think last year maybe is, you know, probably the first year you and your wife work together. You're trying to figure out, you know, who's doing what's everyone's roles, responsibilities,
Right.
what is kind of flowing into the other person's roles, responsibilities, where you're like, hey, this my job. You
Right.
know, that took, I would say, a year to figure out, but you know, I'm on a limited basis, right? I'm not there every day. I'm not sitting doing the, you know, beverage tastings of the new drinks on there. They ask my opinion, you know, hey, have you ever had this? Like, what do you think? And a lot of them, I'm not a big beer drinker, so I'm like, as long as the Red Stripe's still back on there, which I brought back last year, um, you know, I trust you guys.
Okay.
So
Well,
that stuff,
Red Stripe, it's beer.
yes, yep. That's my favorite beer out of there. And I made sure it used to be on the menu and then they took it off previously a couple of years ago. And that was like my one, I guess, request to
Right.
everyone last year on the ordering.
Jamaican beer, right?
Yes. It's funny story. Our first date, we live both of them in the city and we went to Kingston Hall. I'm not sure if it's still around, but my wife, she's like, oh, I love Red Stripe, and it's like on the menu, which you don't really see often, you know, at many bars. So like that was like the drink that like we like laugh about. That was like our first date drink.
So why did they take it off the menu before you put
Eh,
it back?
not a clue. You know, that's before my time, you know, before our time. Drinks come and go, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So actually, it wasn't its beer. It's their commercial is Hooray beer. But uh, do you serve alcohol?
so we do beer and wine only.
Okay.
So what happens is, and we're really passionate about that when, you know, we when we transferred the business over, we went and applied for our liquor license. And we were asked, hey, do you want to go for the full liquor license? And no, we were like, nope, culture is beer and wine, and that's something that made a business out of for years, and it keeps the crowds from being a little less
What I was
rowdy.
going to say is bringing hard alcohol, does that open up other liability issues?
I would assume our insurance goes up, a couple of other things, financially, I'm sure would take into play, but we never looked into it because it just wasn't something that her stepdad, who and her mom owned the business for years. They felt passionately about it, and that's something that we've stuck with, and we'll continue to do that. And it comes down to we're trying to create a family. It already is a family atmosphere, but bringing in what hard liquor, right? Talking about now share houses, right? Coming in
Yes.
shots, give me a vodka soda, a whiskey soda, things could get out of control pretty quickly.
Sure.
From again, the legal side, I'm like, nope, I'm very happy with the beer and wine. It's
You know
easier to
what?
cut off too.
You know your lane and you're staying in your lane, which
Hey,
is,
it's worked. It's one of those things. It's not broken. It doesn't have to fix it, right?
well,
Quick-
that's the old catch 22. Sometimes, and it happened recently with a fairly national brand, that people feel the need to make change.
Yep,
And while change can be good, depending on the change, you can destroy a brand. So it's smart.
exactly.
It's smart that you recognize the shortcomings of making certain changes and you just don't do it.
Yeah, it's what would we like to do, have it brings in more revenue. Let's call it what it is,
Sure.
right? A
Yeah.
lot more revenue. But at the end of the day, it works out having beer and wine. It's known for beer and wine, the restaurant. So there's not really any issues where
And
people
you
are
know
like, I
what?
want a vodka soda.
But if you bring in the more revenue of alcohol and then you drive away your bread and butter client, then what have you really gained? So
Right. You're now replacing that, and now you're playing catch up until you hit the catch up point to make money. So
uh,
we're happy with the way it is. But going back to kind of define roles, it took definitely a year to figure out where we, both are, comfortable operating within the business. And then now bringing in the new management team, it's kind of another kind of reestablishing everyone's roles, right? Like with the experience the two individuals have, the things that we were doing last year in terms of really learning our specific business, our building our clientele, things that we didn't necessarily know because we weren't every day involved. I had my law practice, Kelly was working in the city, right? And we'd come out on the weekends and things like that. Then once we had kids, we stepped away for a little bit, but we'd still be involved, but behind the scenes, very much behind the scenes. And then, so now, you put in the situation, you're like, all right, well, it's us. It's our call. What are we doing?
yeah, you,
So,
you run out of people who you can blame.
kind of. And so,
But you can always find somebody.
we can always find someone, but that's not how, look, I don't, with my team here at the law firm, I don't operate that way. And, Kel, on her day-to-day ops, over there, we're not that type of, we don't run operations that way. We try to facilitate, but it's now we're redefining again, right? Last year was all about, I was like, I did a lot of the back end submitting for permits, the liquor license, the food, getting our food, permits for a new entity, things like that. Now those things are in place, and it's renewals, right? So now, it's almost like a little bit of a lesser role on my part, which is great because now I'm able to really be out here and build up the real estate.
More important, no less important role. Renewing
It's
things is pretty
it is
important.
important,
Yeah.
but it's interesting too because then like Kel and the team they're building on the ground, right? I'm more of the back office guy, which is, I like. That's kind of like, it's my profession's kind of a not back office, but being at an office and working contracts and things like that. So
Being
it's great.
a restaurateur is a whole nother level of, I mean, you always have to be on. You have to,
Exactly.
always have to have your happy face on.
Yep. And then on Saturdays, me and Kel, like, not really recently because it's rained every weekend, so that's not fun for us since
Not
we're
good.
all
Not good
outside.
for an outdoor restaurant.
But what we concentrate on is really walking the floor and chatting people up and make sure everything's good with them, and just try to establish ourselves with our customers, which is important, and kind of putting a face to the everyone talks about the new owners, like, but like no one really knows. Now people are starting to realize it's us, and it's nice. We're like kind of establishing ourselves within the restaurant when people come in. It's like, oh, hey, there's John and Kelly, or like, oh,
Yeah,
hey,
that's,
oh, Bob and Sue are here, like, things like
nobody
that.
loves, I know whenever used to go to a restaurant bar near here, and when you go in and the guy knows who you are and your drink is on the bar before you even
Yep.
have to ask for it, people like to be recognized, no question. So as an owner, glad handing the crowd is critical. But
Yeah, and it's fun. We both enjoy it, and look, Kel, she's a natural salesperson, right? She's
right,
digital ad sales for years, and was in the restaurant business for years. So it took me a minute to kind of learn how to sell, and she taught me that even on the real estate side. In my mind, when I had my own solo practice, when I went out on my own, it's like, all right, I'll just do, the law stuff, clients will just come. It doesn't work that way.
no.
I learned real fast.
And you
You
know
got to
what?
learn how to be a salesman too.
I'm sure she does this, but you always have to have a smile in your voice.
Yes.
People can see very quickly if you ain't into what you're doing. So I think that's great. You guys sound like you make a phenomenal team. So
Yeah.
last question, because we're running out of time, but what do you see? And maybe it's nothing, but what do you see in terms of trends, East End trends? Is the East End market moving in a certain direction, whether it was because of COVID and now who used to be transient are now more permanent? You know, I know some people who live in Sag Harbor. A couple of them have never been to your place. So, what kind of things do you see that will drive people to come?
So I would say first, I just want to hit the real estate side, right?
Sure.
Talking to the realtors, a lot of people that bought and were renting this year, from what I've gathered from talking to a couple of people, they're staying this year. Instead of going on vacation, they're vacationing at the house, and instead of having renters come.
Okay.
So that's pretty cool to have, but that then limits the rental market for available rentals as well,
Right.
which is always still good for the restaurant. As long as there's people out here, that's good for the restaurant. So I like to hear that. In terms of housing out here with sales and purchases and transactions, it's picking up, and it's the inventory. There's not a lot, right? It's not compared to the rest of the island. It's hard to compare it, right? Because this is a specific section. In Nassau, it's a lot smaller.
Inventory is a little bit light in Nassau, Suffolk as well, but
Yes, but this is really light, and deals like, I remember doing deals in, the pandemic out here. You're getting deals left and right out here because people are just selling. Now some houses seem to be sitting a little longer, and some go pretty quickly. It really depends on the house, right? We all know certain houses will go fast, some need
and
some
price.
work, and price. Exactly. So I think that's correcting itself right now. Over the next few months, we'll see that even more, to where the market's just going to dictate this is the price. Are the buyers interested, and are the sellers accepting this is where the market is,
Right.
which will then
Oh,
make some movement.
that's
But
it.
for the restaurant, it's great, because as long as people are out here, and people are vacationing out here, we rely on that, and we appreciate it. And we never, we're grateful that for whoever comes to the restaurant, whether they're locals, whether they're here for the weekend or here for the summer.
Absolutely.
Anyone that wants to stop by, we're happy.
Well, you know what? It sounds like you got a great gig going, It sounds like you guys are doing a great job, and hopefully this will drive some agents in to meet you and get to know you guys for your real estate practice. But
Yep.
I'll spread the word to anyone I know out there who's never been to your place that they got to come and check
Well,
it
you
out.
got to come. You said you haven't been there in a while, so you got to come out
No, not a
in the
while.
spring.
I've never been there.
Oh, you
So
never been.
no,
So I
no.
definitely misunderstood. You got to come for the first time.
I will be there. I will be
All
there. But
right.
listen, John, thank you for coming on. It's interesting, to get different perspectives on different businesses, and when you can combine two businesses with one podcast episode, that's
It's,
I just hit the home run, man. The home run of podcasting.
I appreciate it, and it's been a blast. And
Good. You know what? Maybe
let's
after the summer we'll have you back on to see how the season went.
that's perfect. Let's do it. We'll do
All
a
right.
recap.
Terrific. I will
All
talk
right.
to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Do You Ever Wonder? And we hope that you enjoyed the show. Next week, we will have another terrific guest telling their story. And if there are any specific topics you'd like to hear more about, please don't hesitate to let us know. Our curiosity, like yours, knows no bounds. Please subscribe and like and share this episode on your social media. See you next week.